Well, life is far from normal as an attempt to flatten the curve of the coronavirus has changed everyday routines. Employees are working from home, schools are closed, and bars and restaurants are shut down for the next several weeks. For many of us, anxiety levels are rising as we wonder what will happen next. So how do we keep both our bodies and our minds healthy during this unprecedented time? We've asked some mental health professionals to join us with their advice on how individuals and families can cope with these unusual circumstances. Dr. Carolyn Phelps is a licensed psychologist with Dream Life Psychological Services, and Casey Ladd is a licensed marriage and family therapist with Duluth Family Therapy. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. Phelps, what are some of the concerns that your clients are raising as this crisis becomes a bigger deal in our communities?
Well, I guess first of all, I would like to say they're raising a lot of different kinds of concerns from person to person. And so that's one thing to keep in mind, is that the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting people in very different ways because they come to the table with very different circumstances. So their histories of stress coming into this, both long-term and acute, before the pandemic hit, and then their individual situations, whether they are afraid of losing their jobs, whether they've just lost their jobs, whether they're healthcare workers, whether they are stay-at-home parents who now have extra kids in the house all day and are doing homeschooling and never pictured that they would be doing homeschooling. So lots of different kinds of concerns. And one of the things that we do is we just ask them what is bothering you or what is concerning you, if anything, about this.
Mm-hmm. Casey, how concerned are you about the mental health impact of this pandemic?
Oh, I think that it's going to provide an opportunity for all of us to develop some new coping skills. And I think a great concern that we have is that in families where we see increased stress, that we don't oftentimes get our best functioning, our best parenting, our best behavior from kids when we know this with the chronically stressed families that we work with. And at these times, I think that will elevate. And a great concern would be an increase in domestic violence, that with people living in those kind of close quarters where there may have been problems that preceded this, that as a community, as family members, it's to be aware that those stress levels can increase.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're starting to see already in the region, or is it really too early to tell?
I would say that that's too early at this point, Julie, to tell, and that I don't want to, sound alarmist about that, but I think it is about being kind of more aware. And that's true, I think, about all of the stress levels that we have, and to recognize what are the signs that our stress is increasing and that it may be interfering with our functioning.
Mm-hmm. Are there also concerns maybe related to that about increased use of drugs and alcohol while people are home, while they're dealing with some of these internal stresses?
Well, we know that sometimes when we are faced with greater stress that we don't always choose the wisest ways of coping, and so turning to drugs, alcohol, or other addictive type behaviors can be part of that. I think that there are people in the community who are in recovery or who are in the process of coming into recovery who may be experiencing some stressors because of changes in their treatment programs that are happening. And so one of the things that is available and that I made available to WDSC, and I'm sure that you will be doing something with this, are the online resources that are available for people who are in recovery, as well as a number of other online resources that people can look at.
Mm-hmm. Casey, you work with families. What should parents and caregivers be telling their kids about this pandemic? Because it has to be really frightening for some of them to be, pulled out of school. Now they're at home. Their parents are having issues taking place, and you want to keep things as normal as possible. But any advice to parents?
I think that it's so important that we don't say too much, that we stay age appropriate. But I was talking to a 4-year-old today who could say to me, my mommy, who's a doctor, is not going to be around during the day, that she's going to come home late at night, and she's there because there's a germ called coronavirus, and I watched a video that you should watch. And so I think that in terms of, don't underestimate the need for us to talk to children of all ages, but that mostly what we're saying is that there's something serious that's happening, and we're keeping you safe. And the reason that we can't, go to all the places that we've been to is because we're keeping you safe. Our job is to keep you safe, and your job is to let us. So I think that really frank dialogue is important, but also I think as parents that we kind of have to recognize that how is it that we don't foist our anxiety and our fear on the children. I'm oftentimes saying to parents that when we're anxious, some of the best things that we can do is to get on the floor and play with the kids, because they bring us into this kind of here and now moment where we're not worrying about all the things that we don't have control over. So I sometimes will say to kids, you get to be the experts about play, and make sure that mommy and daddy are playing with you enough. And that there are times when I can watch parents who I know are under a tremendous amount of stress in my office, in play with their children, their shoulders relax, they start to smile more, and I say to the kids, you're doing a very good job helping mommy and daddy not feel so worried.
And I think part of that also is spending maybe more time with family members, carving out time for yourself, and less time connected to the news, and not becoming this 24-hour-a-day news junkie, which I think we're all as adults maybe a little vulnerable to doing, because that's going to increase our anxiety. And I think, frankly, after a certain point, there are more meaningful things that we can be doing with the people who are in our home.
Mm-hmm. How do you balance, though, that need to know and the desire to be informed with your own mental health when it comes to watching all of these messages or taking in all of these messages that are coming from around us?
Well, we're always doing a balancing act in our life, right? We're balancing work and family and play and one-on-one time and friend time, and this is another thing to add into the mix. And some of the rules about that really haven't changed. We all need to still get enough sleep. We need to eat right. We all still need to move our bodies. Our bodies love to move. And now that we have maybe more family members in the home with us, if that is the case, we can all learn to move together. We can institute a practice of gratitude and a daily practice of gratitude that we get all family members involved in. You can challenge family members to do random acts of kindness for each other. And if you're doing those things and making those things part of the priority, you're going to be filling a lot of your time. If you don't have anybody else living in your home and you may be already more socially isolated, then you're going to need to get a little bit more creative perhaps, and reaching out where you can to friends, either through appropriate social media, good healthy social media, or through letters, or through phone, or through Skype. Reading one of the 15 books that you have sitting by your bed, getting involved in crafts, doing things that bring joy into your life, and cultivating the sense of joy, because one of the things that we know is that alongside of pain and challenge, joy can exist simultaneously. And we don't want to forget that part, because that is really important in building resilience, and it's that kind of resilience that's going to get us through this.
Mm-hmm. And I think that to take on that, Carolyn, that that when we are really talking with our kids about some of that reaching out. I had a wonderful teenager in my office yesterday who said this is a time that we need to spread kindness, not germs. And, and her mother could delight in that. The things that I really want parents to also pay attention to is under stress. All of us tend to be more noticing negative things rather than positive things in our life. That's very true with children. We go into stress-filled families on a Saturday morning, we're going to hear no, don't, stop, quit, not, hundreds of times. And so this is an opportunity as we're spending more time together that we are really being intentional about noticing what our children are doing well. And that we are commenting on that. And so really trying to change some of those patterns where the interaction might be critical or negative to where we're really able to delight in our children and delight in each other. And so I love this teenager saying yesterday that we want to spread kindness, not germs.
And hunt the good in others.
And hunt the good in others.
There have been a lot of conversations in recent years about the breakdown of the family. Could this maybe help turn things around and strengthen families in our country and maybe wind up in some ways being a positive even though it's a negative going in?
Well, I think we always have the opportunity to turn a negative situation into a positive one. I don't think we need it to, I don't think that's pandemic specific. So any day could be that day. But what I would say is including today could be that day.
Mm-hmm. And that we see, Julie, a concern that I've had over my 40-some years as a family therapist is a decline in the strength of family rituals. And this is definitely a time, I think, when we can begin to be more mindful and pay attention to the family ritual. I have families saying to me, you know, we don't have the hockey and the soccer and all of the practices, that we can sit down at dinner, that we can involve kids, I think, in a family life that the three of us, I think, had more exposure to and more experience with. And so when we talk about strengthening those family rituals, it's about you have the time to go and wake your kids up in the morning in a way that's different than when we're running out the door all stressed.
And I think one of the things is then you can also decide to, if you like that and if you like the ritual and you see the positive changes, when the pandemic is over, and it will be over someday, you don't have to give up those new rituals that you like.
That's right.
And that's exactly what Casey's talking about.
Mm-hmm. That a 10-year-old this week said is using the pandemic as a way to kind of try to get the parents to consider getting the new puppy. This would be a great time, Mom, for us to train the new puppy. We could walk it, and she said we could call it Corona, and her sister said, and we could call the other puppy we get COVID. I mean, and those are some of the playful and humorous things I think that kids are going to do in terms of maybe trying to use the situation to get parents to be more lax about screen time, to be more lax about what they're eating, to be more lax about chores. And what we know is going to be really helpful for those kids is to have really good structure that's really predictable, that also has the balance between you have jobs to do in the family, that we have time for play, that we have time that we need to sometimes be alone. So you're going to have some of that individual play in your rooms, and we're going to have some family time together. I have families who are talking about ordering puzzles and doing one of those big puzzles together. And a family yesterday said, you know, we haven't done that in a long time. That's a great idea for us to go get a puzzle.
And I think that routines aren't just good for kids, they're good for adults too, and particularly for adults who find themselves working at home now, or maybe their situation has changed because they're homeschooling and they're trying to figure out how to get those routines. And so routines are good for all of us. We sort of crave that as a way of filling in the structure, and really only typically do well structureless for short periods of time that we typically call a vacation and not a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And we do have some insights on the screen that you might want to just go over in terms of what people can do to just be good to themselves.
So first of all, taking care of yourself, not just the family, the other people in your family or who are living in your house. And so again, that goes back to what I said about your body still wants to sleep right, eat right, and move your body right. Body still want to do that. Taking a break and the taking a break can be 5 deep breaths, particularly if you're finding yourself maybe a little on edge at the moment, taking a step outside, taking a cooling off period, developing for kids in the house, where is their cooling off zone, particularly if they don't have their own room. So those are 2 things I'll let Casey talk about.
Well, and I think that we talked about that noticing joy and that enjoyment, and to create those opportunities really for that fun and that playfulness. And the connecting in creative and safe ways. I talked to a family this week where there was a death in the family, and people who were out of state who would have normally come together to have a memorial service, they're meeting online this Sunday night, and that the remaining living siblings are going to be telling stories about the family member and creating a book that they can share with their nieces and nephews. Those are creative ways that I think that families will figure out how is it that we continue to love each other and that we continue to bring hope to each other. There was a great scene this morning about, I think it was California, that it was Grandma's birthday. They couldn't go near Grandma, but there were 4 cars filled with all the grandkids who were singing happy birthday to Grandma. Those are the activities that we can, that we do not have to be cut off from the people that we care about and love. We just may have to do it differently than we're used to.
There are recommendations not to be around people who are elderly or who might have compromised immune systems. What about those folks who might not have that family support system like you were talking about, who doesn't have the kids lining up outside the window? Any thoughts on just what they can do to keep their mental health in a good place, or what people around them can do to assist?
So if they have friends, they can still stay in connection with their friends. You know, right now, we can still go for a walk with our friend, maybe not shoulder to shoulder the way we used to, maybe keeping a little bit more of a distance while you're on that walk. So if you have a friend that you can get together with and do things in creative ways that way. Some of it also is about what can you do for yourself that brings joy into your own heart, that may be more solitary, but nonetheless is joyful and feeds your soul. Being creative, going online. There are good and healthy chat rooms where you can become connected to people, and those resources, again, I gave to WDSE, and maybe you can put them on your website. So there are a number of this is the time where we actually like people being connected to the internet, because I think we have a little bit more creative ways in which we can connect with one another. I do want to say also that mental health organizations across our community have opened up a variety of different types of service delivery methods. So we're not just seeing people in person, but if we're not already up and running on some kind of video conferencing sessions or on telephone sessions, we are getting up and running on them. And emergency mental health services, including at Birch Tree Center, are still open for business as usual, as of course is the emergency room if needed.
All right, well, good conversation. Great tips, and we will have those resources online and on our website for people. So appreciate you coming in and sharing some of your insights, and hopefully it will help people get through this really difficult time.
Thank you for having us,
Thanks.
Julie.